It didn't take long for news of Pasipamire to reach the ears of the king of the Ndebele,
Lobengula.
The name Pasipamire was on everyone's lips. The king's spies and his envoys had all told him of the Rainmaker and how his talents had kept the grazing fields of Dungwiza green, and how the crops and cattle of Dungwiza are now flourishing. Soon, Dungwiza might have bigger heads of cattle than you, my king. But Lobengula was cunning and wise. Christian missionaries in 1858 had befriended King Mzilikazi, Lobengula's father, and Mzilikazi had sent his sons, including Lobengula, to be taught foreign languages, how to read and write, and other things the king believed would be beneficial to his successor. King Lobengula liked to deceive people. He was just a ruthless, savage king, and this worked much to his favor in his reign, for all possible foes would be discouraged from confronting him ever. But underneath the deception was an intelligent, highly educated strategist, tactician, and military commander. Lobengula had heard of Pasipamire several seasons before. First, he had dismissed the rain-making antics of Pasipamire as an exaggerated tale. But now news has reached him of the transformation and prosperity of Dungwiza, accredited to Pasipamire. Bumper harvests, fattened livestock, and surplus food and wealth. Lobengula's father had dealt the finishing blow to the once mighty Shona tribes that rose from Great Zimbabwe. When his armies arrived, the once mighty Shona tribe was on its knees, and after years of war with various Nguni tribes, the Portuguese and their slave armies. If it wasn't for this, his father might not have conquered the Roji army in its prime. After defeating them, Lobengula's father, Mzilikazi, had ruled over the Shona with an iron fist, demanding ridiculously high tribute and ruthlessly punishing any rebellion. Lobengula had done the same, but now he worried the divided Shona tribes would unite under Pasipamire's banner, and partner. United and wealthy Shonas threatened his reign. But making this situation much worse was the arrival of the new hordes of white men pouring into the region, and Lobengula was wary of their intent to usurp his kingdom. Lobengula was worried that his enemies might unite and come and challenge him for the crown. The fields of green grass, the crops, the fattened cows and ever-growing herds all stressed Lobengula to the last extent. Finally, Lobengula came to a decision. Pasipamire must not be allowed to live long enough to unite the Shona tribes and lead a rebellion against him. But Lobengula was fully aware of the magical powers Pasipamire was rumored to possess. So, at first, the king sought to fight magic with magic. And so he sent summons to the great sangomas in his kingdom,
Mapansula
and Mamlambo, the greatest sangomas in the Ndebele kingdom. The sangomas threw their hakatas and consulted with their spirits. And in the spirit realm, it was revealed to them that no sangoma alive can defeat the spirit of CHAMINUKA. And afraid of relaying this information to Lobengula for fear of execution, the sangomas concocted a plan to save their necks. The sangomas told Lobengula that Pasipamire was very powerful indeed and can only be defeated if the sangomas used their most powerful spells. And these spells would require certain rare items to make the magic work. And by naming impossible items to get, they hoped Lobengula would desist from their mission and let them go since he could not acquire these rare items. Firstly, they would require the shell of 100-year-old tortoise. And second, they would require a rock collected from the deepest lake in the region. And third, they would require fresh and warm urine from a lone bull elephant. But the wise and cunning king quickly saw this facade and was angered by it, and ordered the immediate execution of two famous sangomas. Mapantsula and Mamlambo met their end that very day. Having lost confidence in the sangomas, next Lobengula ordered a group of warriors to travel to Dungwiza and drive a spear through Pasipamire's heart. This group was, however, comprised of the lowest caste members of the Ndebele tribe. For these warriors came from defeated tribes who had been assimilated into the great Ndebele tribe as Muzilikazi journeyed into the region, fleeing from the Zulus Mufekane. Within a fortnight, the warrior assassins had arrived at Pasipamire's isolated hut on the fringes of Dungwiza. He had a close bond with nature, and around his homestead, even timid antelopes and other weary wild creatures would graze freely right next to his hut. The warriors waited and observed the hut, and when they saw that Pasipamire was indeed inside, they waited until nightfall. Then they locked him inside with large poles and set fire to the hut made of wood, mud and grass. The warriors expected the fire would easily do the job, but much to their surprise, the hut, instead of going up in flames, started to smoke heavily with a dark, eye-stinging smoke that made it impossible to see or breathe. And so the warriors retreated to what they thought was a safe distance, but the smoke followed them, and they ran for kilometers but could not seem to escape the smoke. The warriors kept retreating until they were very close to Blawayo. This is when they realized that they had failed dismally to assassinate Pasipamire. When the king heard of this news, he was angered even more and did not believe the story of smoke chasing warriors, and so he had these Amahole warriors put to death. Tired of mediocrity, Lobengula sought to employ a professional to do the job, and so he sought out the most renowned huntsman within his kingdom to go and hunt Pasipamire like prey and to bring him his head. Armed with a gun and poison-tipped arrows, the huntsman traveled to Dungwiza and stalked Pasipamire for a number of days. One day when Pasipamire was alone in the forest, sitting under a tree, from a short distance, the huntsman shot his gun at Pasipamire, but the bullets seemed to miss. Again he shot, and a third time, until he was convinced that his trusty gun was malfunctioning. And so he loaded his poison-tipped arrows, and one after the other shot at Pasipamire. Shockingly, his right arm would lose strength when he was about to loose the arrows, and so each of the arrows he fired would fall to the ground before hitting their mark. Lastly, the huntsman approached Pasipamire brazenly to stab him with his spear, but before he could do it, Pasipamire looked to him and said, "Your gun and your arrows refuse to obey you today. Why do you think your spear will listen to you now?" With that said, the huntsman gave up on his quest and asked Pasipamire, "Why do weapons not work on you?" And so Pasipamire looked to him and said, I am CHAMINUKA, the great spirit. Guns and blades cannot harm me.